You remember, John.
Well, no, but now Nikki is
Oh,
yeah, helping us out. Instead of
you should have taken the credit.
the truth would have come out. Instead of a 40% chance of it being recorded, we're now going to operate at 100%. Something we've never experienced before. All right, I'm just sorry, let me oh.
Has anybody else had tendonitis before?
Yes, I have.
It is the most painful thing.
You must be doing a repetitive task.
Well, I'm finishing my dissertation, so I'm just writing and writing and writing, and I'm in so much pain. I can't even like move my hand right now.
I got it one time when I was younger, cutting a lot of mat boards for doing some mechanicals, and I must have cut, I don't know, 50 boards, and my hand was a mess.
Right? It's amazing how much you need your thumb.
That opposable thumb, you know?
So we have, I'm just counting myself, Deborah, Joe, Larry, Patrick, Mika. I'm not missing any EDC members, am I? I said Patrick, yeah. So we have a quorum, and it's 2 minutes after 6. So I'm going to suggest that we go ahead. And that we have a smaller than normal number of EDC members, but Michael Malik will be a few minutes late, he said. So we have welcome. This is the March 3rd regular monthly meeting of the Economic Development Commission. I'm calling it to order. The agenda is on the screen. We have a financial update. We actually have some new and good information, positive information. We have a couple of small sort of administrative, well, mostly administrative topics under new business. And then we have the continuation of last week's discussion about how to manage the public forum as a way to get input. And I just want to see if Thalia is on. She is not. Oh, and Marion is here now too. So we have 7. Okay. So, all right. So that's the agenda. I've called the meeting to order. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? My screen. No. Okay. Seeing none. Citizen comments. If there are any comments that typically, as we say every month, if the comments are related to what's on the agenda, if you can hold off on them, we'll typically have time to get to them. If it's on some other topic, then now would be a good time. Kareem, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Sorry, let me lower my hand here. I just have a couple of quick comments. I know that there's a mix of sort of online feedback that you're putting together, and you'll address that later in the agenda, John, and the rest of the team. But there's also, I believe, a session on a Saturday. Unfortunately, this falls within our breakfast service. Yeah. So I'm not going to be able to actually attend, but I did submit my thoughts to the EDC, and I would hope that somehow these will be taken into consideration as you consider some of what you might be doing. So that's really a request, just because I just cannot physically attend it because I'm doing something else, right? That is more pressing, which is running our business. That's the first point. The second point, and I may start to sound like a broken record, but obviously everybody noticed that the 1% sales tax got defeated by 1% of the votes, which is ironical. But I think we need to take that as an indication that a lot of people are starting to see that some of those alternative revenue sources need to go towards helping taxpayers alleviate their pressure. And I know that Mary said that formally nothing has been brought to her to consider perhaps looking at if there's ways to redirect a portion perhaps of the EDC funds towards that. And, I have some thoughts, but I'm sure there are some thoughts. I guess my question is, does that need to be brought in front of the select board by citizen, or will the EDC take the initiative to actually bring that to the select board in order to discuss potentially, reallocating some of the funds, perhaps in my opinion, in a more sort of optimal way for taxpayers? So that is my question and the request at the beginning of my citizen comment.
Right. Well, let me just deal with them in sequence. In terms of making sure that your thoughts that you wrote down are incorporated, the intent, as you'll see when we get to the old business point, the intent is for the EDC members to review the public comments from before we begin the meeting. So as long as you can put them into that system, and you can just paste them in,
okay, fine, got it.
That system will be online in some form, but it'll be online tomorrow. We have it up and running. We're just ready to pull the switch based on tonight's discussion. On the second question, the decision would have to be made by the select board. Well, actually, it's not 100% clear. Let me answer that question by deferring a little bit, by basically getting advice as to what would need to be done in order to redirect funds. It's not clear to me whether the voters or the select board have to make the final decision. I know for sure that the EDC could only recommend that it be done or recommend against it. But so I'd like to, Deborah, Joe, I see your hand. So Deborah and then Joe after this. But but why don't we just take that under advisement, Kareem, and we'll let you know. Certainly, you have the community has the right to raise this issue, and I think the EDC would certainly want to be involved in that discussion. I'm hesitating just a little bit here because between now and the end of March, we're definitely not going to bring it up. And I know you're not asking us to do that because we kind of have to go through our grad process. I know you're not asking us to do that. So I think why don't we consider that, during this month, I'll try to figure out, or we'll try to figure out what the proper approach for that would be, and we'll let you know. And then we'll try to figure out as a committee whether or not we want to take that issue up or whether we want to let citizens bring it to us or to the select board. So.
Okay. Just last 30 seconds. I guess my question, if I had to break it down, what is the process to bring it to the select board? Right. And then, which probably is going to be an easier. And then the other one is, and that's a double-edged sword, right? The mandate is very broad, so it's open to interpretation. So it might lead to endless discussions, right? So there's an advantage and a disadvantage to have a very broad mandate. And this is where I guess it's going to require a little bit more strategic sort of thought around this. And that's it. Sorry.
Agreed. And we are, as a committee, we are trying to interpret again, because we've already interpreted it a few times, the 4 words that are in the legislation that establish the funding, which is economic and community development. Those are the only 4 words that have legally bind us, and we've interpreted those with the public, in public meetings and with the select board's concurrence. But as you know, we're trying to reinterpret those again this year to clarify them. So, all right, let's just. Thank you, Kareem. Deborah, this is citizen comments. I mean, Deborah, you're a citizen, but not on the topics on the agenda today. So Deborah and then Joe.
Yeah, no, I just want to take an opportunity to thank the people who came on Sunday night to the vigil on the green, and to let people know that on Sunday nights, right at sunset, people are meeting just to hold space and be together to have a moment of prayer for Ukraine on Sunday. So that's on the green at dusk, which is right now around 5:45 to 6. And I really appreciate the people that came out in the middle of the squall. It hit just as we got there, but it was, people shared some stuff and it was really quite beautiful. So if people want to come, it's on Sunday.
All right, thank you. Joe?
On second thought, John, I'll let it go for now. Thanks.
Okay. All right, any other citizen comments before we move on? If your camera is not on, you can raise your hand in the reactions. I think the reactions thing at the bottom. No, okay, seeing no others. All right, approval of the minutes I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 3rd, which are posted on the website in today's. Would someone from the EDC make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Patrick,
Second.
Joe, second? Joe, will you second it?
Second.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, Deborah seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Financial update. Just as a reminder, if this gets, at some point, someone can tell me to stop saying the same thing every 3 months, but I figure that the audience is changing, so it's worth explaining. 6 weeks after the end of a quarter, we receive our share of the options tax from the state.
He's the flower box guy.
And so February 15th is when we get the money from October, November, December. The EDC classifies that February payment as revenue in 2022, but it was actually from activity that occurred in October through December of 2021, just so you know what the data is. So this shows our EDC revenue in the fourth quarter, October through December, in thousands. The last column is a new piece of information. And you can see that we continue, and maybe if we did a regression line, maybe slightly have accelerated our growth. 2022 of 101,000 is about 16% higher than what we had in 2019 or 2020, both the same. The fourth quarter of 2019 was the last. October through December of 2019 was the last normal economic period we had. So you can see that we've grown nicely. That was looking at the trends over the last 3 quarters. That was not surprising. We were seeing improvements quarter by quarter. First quarter of 2021 was down by a lot. Second quarter was down by a little. The third quarter was up by a little. And now the fourth quarter is up by a little more. So that's all good. If we continue to be 16% ahead of 2019, which is what we are on this chart, our annual revenues would reach about 345,000. It's the highest they've ever been, and about 50% higher than when the EDC was formed in 2016. I think the EDC's metrics, we can't claim credit for this revenue, but I think the EDC revenue is a reasonable metric, or it's the best ongoing metric we have of the overall economic condition of Woodstock. It's not perfect by any means, but it's not bad. And so this is, I think, a good indication of healthy economic growth. Whatever the consequences of that growth are, I'm not trying to get into a debate about whether we have too many people in town during certain seasons and so forth. And as we go into the annual meeting, while it's not a hard and fast policy of the EDC, the community was, I would say, the people were somewhat concerned during the initial years of the EDC when the EDC wasn't spending what it earned annually. And I think at least, maybe it's just me, but perhaps others would be concerned if we consistently spent more than we were earning. So as we think going into our annual meeting about how much funds, sorry, can folks mute themselves if they, Nikki, maybe you can see who's generating sound and mute them. So as we go into the annual meeting, as we think about what funds we might have available, the last time we did this, we had about 300,000. This year, I think it's fair to say we'll have somewhere between 300 and 350,000 unless there's a reversal in the economy. So that's just something to keep in mind. In addition to that, we ended 2021 with about 370,000 in the bank, so to speak. So if we wanted to spend more than 300,000, we could. If we spent less than 300,000, that would be added to our balance. It could be spent in future years. Or even just as a reminder, could be spent later in 2021 after the annual meeting with the concurrence of 2/3 of the EDC. If you remember that we have a policy that says it's our own imposed policy, we impose it on ourselves, that we can grant funds after the annual meeting, but only with the approval of 2/3 of the EDC. And I think the idea is that it should be on an exception basis. So that's our financial condition. Are there any comments about that, Kareem?
Yes, hold on, let me lower my hand. So I just want to, obviously, since those funds are coming through the levy of hotels and restaurants, being myself a hotel owner, albeit a small one, and maybe Patrick wants to add some comments there, I just want to sort of propose some color to this as you look forward over the next 6 to 12 months. So, heading into 2020, the two fears owner that we had, because 20 mostly, as a reaction to the post-pandemic, and we expected perhaps things to slow down a little bit, still remain strong, but slow down a little bit, right? So now what we're noticing is it's still extremely hard to actually find staff. And because of that, in some cases, we do have to shut down rooms to give some time off to our housekeeping staff, right? Because it's very hard. And this is not for lack of trying, and we're actually increasing, the entry-level hourly rate that we're offering, all right? So some of what might be driving this is some people just left the sector, and they're not coming back. So there is one sustained risk there. I also understand that the labor department is not pushing people to prove that they're looking for a job in order to get unemployment benefits, but I'm waiting for that confirmation. And if that's the case, I think we're going to get our lobbyists to start doing something at the Vermont Lodging Association. The second risk that we were a little bit concerned about as far as slowdown of revenues was the fact that people with all the discretionary income would start traveling more abroad. It's probably going to happen, but with the geopolitical issues right now because of Ukraine and the spillover this might have, and the implication potentially of exacerbating inflation pressures because of energy costs, this may not happen, and people might still in the US prefer to just drive to Vermont in order to spend some of their vacation money. Now, this might be counteracted by the fact that, people, may feel that things are really expensive and they cannot afford to go on vacation. So I'm not quite sure how to deal with that one, but, and I'm not sure what that means for those folks who are planning, to come to the States from Europe if things are really unstable there, right? So, so I think a best case scenario, if we can hope for a better year than 2019, but not necessarily as good as 2021, I think the EDC will see a good amount of revenues with some of the uncertainties I just mentioned. And I hope this is useful color for you, since a lot of your funding comes from hotel restaurants. And I don't know if Patrick would like to add something to this. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Patrick, but just in case you want to add something.
No, I said last year that 2022 will probably slow down just because of the pent up demand in the end of the second half of 2021. We're still seeing things pretty strong right now, but you just don't know with the current situation going on in Ukraine. But if anything, I think we'll still have a fairly strong year. Because people will probably be a little nervous about traveling to Europe and so forth. So we'll see. I agree with a lot of what Kareem said.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that's a good caution to have. Is there any other, Todd, are you raising your hand or agreeing? I can't tell. Okay. Any other comments about the financial update? It's really just to kind of keep it in mind as we go through the granting process.
I have one quick question, John. So the money that you just recorded, that is 2021 money or 2022 money?
No, we count it as 2022 money. It was received, it was earned in 2021 in the October through December, and we get the check in 2022. So we're like on a cash basis, so to speak. We got the check in February, it's this year's money. And
Okay,
all of our
that's what I
statements.
wanted- That's what I wanted to confirm. With this year's. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments on the financials before we move on? Okay, a couple of other administrative things, and let me just share the screen again if you can see this. Sorry, I can make it a little bigger. I can try to make it a little bigger. There we go. Okay, new business. I would like to get the concurrence of the EDC members to this approach. So anyone who disagrees with this, please just speak up. Up until December, as you all know, Sally Miller served as our EDC coordinator, which included an administrative role, but also included very significant other responsibilities. Partly because of automation and partly because of the fact that we're about to reconsider our mission or how we interpret those 4 words, economic and community development. I have not been aggressively, I haven't taken any steps, and neither has anyone else on the EDC, to define the coordinator role, to set aside funds for it and so forth. But we do need the administrator role. And so there is a proposal among the 31 applications for grants, is an application for administrative costs for 2022, which is the administrative piece of what Sally was doing. And my suggestion is that we retain as a contractor a person. It won't cost us a lot because it's probably about 15 hours a month of work, basically taking the minutes, posting the agendas, recording and managing the Zoom meetings and so forth. Nikki Norse, who's very experienced at this, is doing this on a temporary basis because we haven't posted the position. I believe it's anything that we spend, if it's a position like this, we have to post it, and so we will do that. Nikki has indicated that she's going to apply for that, but other people might apply as well. And hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be in a position to make a selection and to have an administrative person to deal with this through the year. The other choice we have is to combine that position and to create the coordinator position and so forth. I don't have a point of view about whether we should have that in the future, maybe even in the near future, 3 or 4 or 5 months from now, once we complete our strategic review. But I don't think we know enough. I think it would be a mistake to create a coordinator position and put money aside for it when we don't know exactly what our priorities and our programs are going to be. So that's how I'm proposing to handle it. And I will post that job. There is an application in for funding for that job for 15 hours a month through the end of the year. If there's does anyone on the EDC object to that approach? No, okay. The second brief item is the Main Street program, and Thalia Tringo, am I saying her name right? I don't believe she's on the meeting. Thalia, are you here? I may be mispronouncing your name, but Thalia has suggested that the EDC consider participating in a program called the Main Streets Program. I was going to have her speak about it briefly tonight, but fortunately, Bill Kerbin, Bill, you're here, and we won't discuss this tonight, but could you just give a 30-second sense of what it is, and then at the next meeting, we'll consider it when Thalia is here.
So just kind of in a nutshell, this would be setting up an independent, totally separate independent body from the town that includes a board of directors. Generally, there's a part-time or a full-time executive director that runs the program. And what this program would do is it really helps boost the downtown area. And it also offers a lot of grant assistance. So it's a really big plus.
And it's a federal block grant program, is that correct?
No, it's not actually not a federal block grant program, but it is a national program. But each state kind of has their own Main Street program.
Okay.
So it's modeled off a national program, and there's certain criteria that you have to meet as part of that, under the Main Street program, the
Okay.
National Main Street program to qualify, so.
Okay, all right, well,
That's, it's just really kind of a nutshell. I'm certainly.
yeah,
not
no,
an
that's fine.
expert
No,
on
no,
it, so-
I'd like to hold off on the discussion of it for real until Thalia is here. She has had some deep
Yeah,
experience
she has
with it.
more
and-
experience than I did, yeah.
Okay, anyway, just wanted to let people know. Joe, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm just curious, what does it do? What is it? What is the program?
I don't know. To be
Oh.
honest.
Okay.
I've just told you more than I know.
Ah,
That's why fortunately Bill is here to at least have some real facts.
okay.
Next is the meeting schedule for reviewing annual grants. The one piece of business that the EDC is legally allowed to conduct in private without declaring executive session is to talk about scheduling. And so we have had a private, not because we wanted it to be private, but just because we wanted to do it in the last 48 hours. So we've had an email exchange about how to conduct our annual meeting, the timing and the logistics of these meetings would be. We have 31 applications. I think you're going to see in a moment that 2 of them, it turns out, are one of them is from outside of Woodstock, and one of them is from a person who did not submit a pre-application, and we've already decided not to accept those at the annual meeting. So we have 29 applications that we need to submit. I propose logistically that we allocate 20 minutes per application, and that we meet on Saturday, a week from this Saturday, the 12th, from 9 to 3, with a break for lunch. And that we reserve 3 additional evenings from 6 to 8:30. The first 2 to continue the evaluation of applicants, and the third one to make recommendations to the select board, having heard all of the presentations. That will give us about 20 minutes, maybe more, but about 20 minutes per applicant. And that would be in addition to the 1 week of public feedback that we will hopefully enable tonight and launch tomorrow morning. Here's the schedule of when we can do it. And there are 3, so everyone is available on Saturday, March 12th. And the 3 best other days are Monday, the 14th, immediately following it, Tuesday, the 22nd, and Wednesday, the 23rd. The 15th, which also has 8 people available, there's a select board meeting that night. And so we lose Nikki, and there's not?
It's the village information meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, there's a meeting. We can't use. We lose Nick. We lose the room, and we lose Nikki.
And
So-
John, just so you know, there's a select board meeting on the March 14th now.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all right. Well, I thought I had this all solved, and now we don't. All right. Well, in any event, I don't think we have we have to give all the applicants, in my opinion, we have to give the applicants some chance. They've done a lot of work to prepare. We have to give them a chance. It seems like 20 minutes is the absolute minimum to kind of, we will have read their applications. We know what they're proposing, but we want to have a chance to ask questions. We want to give them a chance to speak for a couple of minutes to highlight certain things. That seems to me like a bare minimum. So I'm going to propose, even if there is a select board meeting on the 14th, just because it's the closest. Well, the informational meeting, Mary, which would you recommend we conflict with? Is there do you have a?
Well, I know that the trustees informational meeting is like their village meeting presentation.
Oh, so it's,
Yeah.
it's,
I wouldn't,
yeah, you wouldn't.
probably well attended.
Okay, so then I'm going to propose the 4 dates here. Saturday, which is we've already discussed, and then Monday evening from 6 to 8:30, Tuesday the following week, and Wednesday the following week. Or Wednesday the 23rd would be the decision-making meeting, where everybody can attend. I think there's a possibility if we manage ourselves with good discipline, there's a possibility that we wouldn't need the Tuesday, March 22nd meeting. We could get through everything, or it could be shorter. And maybe, you know, so, but I think we need to block this time out. As some people have said in the past, this is a very important aspect. I realize this is a pain in the neck. It all comes at one time, but I think it's just most efficient for us to blow it kind of through it. And we did agree that that was the right approach at the last meeting.
Is your March 14th proposed meeting going to be in person here?
It'll be in the same format, in a hybrid. All of our meetings going forward until we change will be both in person and virtual, but we could do it at the library. From a technical point of view, we could do this at the library if we had to, or
Well, we've had 2 meetings.
or we could do it in the, or we could do it in the other room now that the mask
I
mandate is.
just wanted you to know
Yeah.
that we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than burnout, is there a reason we couldn't add an hour to the Saturday meeting if, because that might help as well.
That is not, that is the only reason. Not, I'd be, you know, 9 to 3, you know, if we had 45 minutes for lunch, it's a long day, but it'll be an interesting day. We could do it from 9 to 4, and that would further reduce the requirement to do it, you know, an extra day. Although I wouldn't count on it, but that's a good suggestion, Marion. Is anyone opposed to that, or does anyone have any other EDC members have feelings about this?
The
Joe?
only question that
Oh,
sorry, Joe.
Joe raised his hand. Joe and then Deborah. I assume, Joe, you're trying to unmute. I think I can do it for.
Got it.
Alright.
I think the suggestion of, you know, extending it a little bit longer on Saturday is a good one. I
Okay,
mean, yeah, it is a long day. Making it just a little bit longer to help out in the long run, I think is a good suggestion. I would agree with that.
Deborah?
The other thing that I wanted to say, I would agree as well, but the other thing that I would want to put in there is, can we have a sign up sheet for the applicants so that they don't have to just hang around all day to try to, you know, so they know the time, you know, that they're coming, and we just say, get here 15 minutes early, so they don't have to be here all day.
Yeah, can we come back to, it's a very important point. Let's just first get the times and then let's talk about that for 1 second. And any other comments about the times?
I have never in my experience with different meetings and people being that would strictly adhere to a specific frame. In other words, what you're saying is we're going to give them 20 minutes. It never, I doubt if it ever works that way. I mean, you know, they kind of get a little bit verbose and want to comment a little bit further, and we maybe have an extra question or two. So I think to anticipate it's going to be a solid 20 minutes each time, I think is a little bit unreasonable to think that way.
And that's, I was going to come back to that, but I think there may be, we can probably impose some kind of order, but it can't be, like signing up for, you know. Marion, you suggested expanding it. I think you mentioned say to 4 o'clock, but should we go to 5 o'clock? I mean,
Sure.
so 9 to
Sure,
5,
that's what we're gonna 5.
9 to 5 with an hour for lunch or something of that sort.
It sounds great.
Okay. And then again, Deborah, we'll come back to your point. So I see nodding heads for those of you that are on camera, and I just want to go back to my screen for a minute. So the dates that we need to block out then are Saturday, March 12th from 9 to 5 with an hour for lunch. Let's just say from 12:30 to 1:30. So if you do have other things to do, you can use that time to go do them. So 9 to 5, lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. And we'll have lunch if you're here at Town Hall. We'll have sandwiches or something. And then Monday, March 14th, Tuesday, March 22nd, and Wednesday, March 23rd. So the 14th, the 22nd, and the 23rd from 6 to 8:30. Those are the days that we're blocking out. Now, let's turn to Deborah's point and Joe's comment about schedule. I think.
Just to be clear, I wasn't saying that, you know, you get here at 1 and anticipate 1, but if I sign up for 1, I need to get here a half an hour early just in case, you know, but you at least give people time frames that would work.
I think
And
we
you
need,
may be here a half hour later too. So it's both ends.
right, we need to give,
I think Deborah's point is trying to prevent people from hanging around all day long.
right,
Wait for their time to come up. I mean, just give them some kind of a ballpark number so that they don't have to spend the whole day just sitting in the seat waiting for their turn.
Like a
yeah.
2-hour range. We'll see you sometime within that 2-hour range or something.
Yeah, yes.
well,
Can you just clarify, so is the extension of making this a full 8-hour day going to reduce, is that going to make it so that we don't need to meet another day later next week? Or
it is
is
like,
it just adding another 12
No, no.
hours and we're just gonna keep plugging through?
it's another 2 hours.
Sorry,
Yeah.
do I sound grumpy? I'm sorry if I do. I can hear it in my tone. I apologize.
No, I think the real answer, Mika, is we don't know. We're doing it in order for the chance to reduce another evening's meeting. We're definitely doing it to shorten the need for those subsequent meetings. However, we decide to allocate the shortening, but we don't really know, to Joe's point, because, you know, telling someone they're at 19 minutes and 40 seconds when they're in the middle of their speech as to why, you know, their application is going to make Woodstock the, you know, envy of the world is going to be difficult. So on the other hand, we should also be clear, there are certain applications, and I think there's ways for us to do this during the meeting where we don't need the whole 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We understand. And, you know, I think in most cases, we understand, we've seen this kind of thing before and we're fully supportive, or we've decided as a matter of policy that it's really not, you know, I mean, I think with the positives, we could potentially shorten if everyone is in immediate agreement. We understand that the application was comprehensive. We don't really have many more questions. I think for the negative side, we probably need to give people a little bit more time to argue their case so they don't feel that they've been disadvantaged. So I think, Mika, we're not just gonna, you know, while we
We're not
enjoy,
just adding hours.
while we enjoy the time we spend with each other, and I find the meetings fascinating. This is my whole life. I understand the rest of you have actually lives, you know. Yes, hold on one second. Mary has a comment. Go ahead, Mary.
Last year, when people were here to make their presentation, one woman came early so she could hear a couple people before her because she had never done it.
Right.
And another person said to me after I had spoken to the EDC, "You've done this before, it's obvious."
Right.
So, you know.
We should encourage people not to show up the moment of their schedule.
Yeah, that's right, because they might want to hear a little before, just come in and sit quietly.
Right. It's a very good point. Could people hear Mary, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. All right, Kareem, before we finalize this, Kareem?
Yes, I mean, having read all of them actually, and that's the reason why I'm making my comments. And before I forget, let me just lower my hand here. Otherwise, it's just noise for you, John. I mean, to your point, since you guys have read those and the information is available in order to try to get them all done in that one day, perhaps just, you know, you guys start.
Sorry, Jesus.
You guys just start by asking questions, and then once the questions are answered, you know, you can get an opportunity, as opposed to people representing everything that they did, just what would be the one argument that they think is the strongest for their project, as opposed to actually presenting the projects, since you guys can read it, unless you guys have a question on that.
No, absolutely. We're not going to ask for presentations.
Okay.
We're going to start everyone by saying, we've read your application. We understand it. You know, we have some questions at the end, if you'd like to make some comments, you know, I think we have to give people a chance to make a statement.
Great.
So,
all right, thank you.
There's some technology that I think we can use that will allow people to see the progress of the meeting. If, you know, if Marion, if you know that you're 7th on the list today, and we think that that's going to be at 11 a.m., we can give you a website that says, you know, as of 10 a.m., we're ahead of schedule. You better be here, or vice versa. So we could actually do something like that that would allow people to, I don't know if we can get that done in time, but we'll see. Larry, you have a comment, question? Larry Niles, I think you're raising your hand, but your camera's off now.
Are we allowing people to present by Zoom?
Yes, well, unless, I'm sorry, no EDC members have complained or suggested otherwise. My view for the moment is that hybrid meetings, that everything we do should be hybrid. You can come here or you can do Zoom. If anyone on the EDC or a majority of us disagree, we'll change that. So I didn't mean to impose that, but that's what I had been planning on. And we're technically able to do it. I think even if we have the meeting in another room or in another building, we're able to do that. Are you okay with that, Larry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that maybe helps people in terms of scheduling too, because they can keep track of where they are and be able to time their presentations accordingly.
Yeah. We actually could have a camera that just said what number we're on, just focus.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. You just go into the Zoom meeting and you see we're up to number 5, and then Marion, you're number 7. You know what.
Someone asked not to be scheduled in the middle of the select board meeting on the 14th.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, I think what we'll do, I think, is we'll publish a schedule with some coherent grouping of like applications. And then we'll ask people if that's a problem. We'll publish it in advance and ask people if that's a problem to let us know, and we'll move them around. So,
Thank you.
all right, any other questions about the logistics? Marion, is your hand up? I don't know what the difference between a white hand and a yellow hand is. Can some
cursor.
Oh, that's the cursor.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
someone else's cursor. Okay. Any other comments about the logistics? No, okay. All right, then back to the document. I'm sorry, there's got to be I think I need to, it's going to be a better way to do this. Okay. Oh, sorry, before we go on to discuss the public input, which is the last subject on our agenda, I just wanted to give everybody a quick report. You could compile this yourself. All this information is public. The EDC's website now has all of the final applications. There are 31 of them in the database, and it's accessible at the EDC's website, www.woodstock-vermont.com. These are the 31 that of final applications from the 49 that had pre-applications, and they total about 560,000. But you can see that 53,000, the 2 at the bottom, do not have ID numbers. Those ID numbers were the IDs of the pre-applications. So you can see, first of all, I'll show you in a moment the list of pre-applications that did not submit final applications and therefore won't be considered. But in addition, there are 2 applications that did not submit pre-applications. One of them, called The Renovation, from a woman named Denise Nash, is a very worthwhile cause. I think it's for a low-income housing project in White River Junction to try to create some social events and so forth. But our policy has always been and has been for this process as well, that we're only supporting programs in Woodstock. So we will communicate with Denise and tell her that that's the case. I mean, I'm not making that decision arbitrarily. We've all made that decision in the past. Similarly, we made the decision 2 months ago not to accept applications that did not have a pre-application. And Thaddeus Wilderson, if I'm saying his name right, has submitted an application, which you can see, it's online, for remodeling a house that is being used for employee housing and would like to continue to use for employee housing, but it needs some structural repairs. It's a big grant request for $50,000. We've decided not to consider applications at the annual meeting without a pre-app, but we have also said that people can apply, subsequent to the annual meeting on an exception basis with the 2/3 agreement of the EDC. So I would encourage EDC members to look at that application, and if we feel like we want to encourage Mr. Wilderson to apply later in the year because of the purpose of his grant, which is one of our priorities, then I think we should do that. But I don't think we should. I think we have decided not to consider that at the annual meeting. And so we would have a total of about $500,000 of grant requests. And this is the list. Again, you can get the same list if you scroll through on the website.
Hey, John,
Yeah.
is there a way to print this out? The each different application as a single document, a PDF or something?
Yeah, there isn't an easy way, but we've had this request already. So Todd and I, between us, will figure out a way to get it in the next couple of days. I think that there is a way to do it. It may be slightly automatable. And I think what I'll do is try to prepare a PDF book that basically has this as the, title page, and then has the printout of each of the EDC.
Yeah, I would appreciate that because I like to write notes on things.
I understand that. I don't want to sponsor printing lots of paper, but the reality is that some people work, including me, actually work best that way. So we'll get that posted. This document that you're seeing on the screen, like always, is on the EDC website right now. This doesn't have any of the backup, but these pages are on the EDC website under the documents for tonight's meeting. So this is accessible. On the next page these are the pre-applications that were, well, a few of these were withdrawn and others simply did not notify us and did not submit final applications. I believe John Curtis notified us. He had 2 applications. Thalia Tringo notified us that they were withdrawing.
Sorry, John. Pam Young also notified us. I thought that I forwarded that email to you. Maybe I didn't.
You may have. I tried to, yeah, you may have. And I tried to indicate, this chart should say remaining pre-applications. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with someone withdrawing by not submitting. They didn't commit any. It's perfectly fine. In fact, I expected some people, to do that. I think they just, they came to the conclusion that for whatever reason, that it wasn't worth it.
Marion's got a hand up, John.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marion, go ahead.
I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but it's my newbie question. Do we have a sort of a policy or an idea or a direction in terms of how much of the available funds we want to spend on the grants? And also, this is the total newbie question, are there other ways in which the EDC is authorized to spend funds outside of this grant process?
Okay, 2 good questions. Let me answer those. The comments that I made at the beginning, I've made pretty much sort of every year. We can't spend more money than we have. Other than that, we have no legal limitation as to when we're supposed to spend the money.
So I think, my question really in my head is, of course, I assumed we wouldn't spend more than we have, but is there sort of a best practice in terms of we spend half on grants and then half is for, do we have sort of a policy? Or
well, okay, statistically, we have not established a pattern. We have discussed, and no one on the EDC has objected to a general notion over the last few years that we would target spending of about what we would expect to earn in the coming year, give or take. So COVID interrupted that. The first time we did it was just before COVID. We ended up spending about 20% more than we thought we would get. There were years where we spent much less than we got prior to that. Maybe, I don't know why, maybe because we didn't have good application, good things to spend it on. So I think we're feeling our way. As the chair, my only advantage, so to speak, is, I set the agenda. That basically I will advocate, not strongly, but I will suggest that we stick to, let's consider for this next year, given the comments that were made early in the meeting, that we have about 300,000 or so, maybe $325,000 to grant. Let's not grant money to anything we think in order to achieve that objective. And let's not consider that to be an absolute limit if we found $375,000 of fantastic proposals. As a practical approach, that's sort of what we did in 2020.
And then the second part of that question are grants the only way in which we spend that money, or could we say, like, we want to spend a portion of that in some other way?
So what we have done since 2020 and what we are doing now is we are considering what I'll call our spending, projects that we generate, in the same process and at the same time as when we consider projects that other people do generate. And so you'll see on the mix of those 30 projects, 10 of them are from the EDC and 20 of them are from the community-ish, maybe, yeah, something like that. I think we've felt that that was fair, that we ought to subject ourselves to the same thing. So I think in the same way, so therefore, most of our funds will be allocated during the annual meeting when all of that is done together. However, we have, I think, appropriately said, although that, look, what if happens if someone on the EDC or not on the EDC comes up with a fantastic idea in August? We're going to say to them, sorry, this is the better idea than anything we heard in January, but sorry, we're just not going to do it. That doesn't make any sense. And so with a 2/3 vote, we can consider spending, whether it's a community project or an EDC project, we would consider both of those to be a grant. And in all cases, it would go to the select board. In this, this will go as whatever we approve over the next few weeks will go as a bundle to the select board. And then anything that we do in the remainder of the year, which I hope is small, but if there's a fantastic idea, great, let's do it. So I think we have, we have the flexibility to do, I think, what you're what you think might need to be done. Okay. Lisa Lawler has her hand up. Lisa, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
One of the things that I'm hearing is in the economy the way it is, and with the taxes going the way it is, I would hope that the EDC would look towards working with the village or the town on projects that both increase our economic development and improve the village. I mean, for example, we have a serious problem with our sidewalks. Now, the sidewalks benefit both our economic development, they benefit our village, they benefit our town. It's a safety issue. So I'm hoping that based on the things that are happening now in the village, the cost, the rate, our taxes are increased, our things are increasing, that economic development should be looked at not only as private individuals or economic development individuals, but also looking at what best serves the community as a whole and not as a private interest. If I'm making sense right now, we have some issues in our village that need to be addressed that will improve economic development, but we also need to partner with the village or the town to do them. So I'm hoping that when you look at grants and when you look at the future, you look at developing things that you can partner with the village. I mean, I was on the village. I can't remember if I was on the village or the town select board, and they were talking about the funds that are coming in now for, I can't remember what it was for, but it was part of the economic development from the feds. And there's $268,000 available for Bridgewater to spend money. I mean, for Woodstock to spend money. And I think it's important that we find out what this money is, and we start to think about how to partner with our public figures in order to create better development of the village.
Well, I think that just a couple of things. One is that the EDC is part of the municipal government. And we're appointed by the select board with the purpose, as I said, which is voted on by legislation by the town to do economic and community development. And we, that is a very, as someone earlier said, that is a very broad phrase. We have generated, and you'll see in the list, it's all on our website of the 29 applications, we have generated a series of proposals the EDC has generated that we think are worth considering, that benefit the entire community and foster economic and community development. I will note that there is an application from the town. Well, I don't know, Bill Kerbin is one of the 29 applicants, has put forward an application. I don't know, Bill, Bill wears two hats. I don't know if it's the town and the village. I'm not sure which hat he was wearing. Maybe he was wearing two hats while he submitted that. And so, yeah, so I think that you know, that I suppose the town could submit an application. I mean, I would hope that this would be done at the annual meeting rather than at you know, in between, but, you know, could submit a proposal for a $75,000 grant to contribute to fixing the sidewalks, just to sort of pick that.
I think that what I was trying to say is that we need to be, whoever is on the, we need to be thinking about putting some money aside that may be part of the greater good versus individual businesses or individual, you know, money for a coffee shop. I'm not disrespecting anyone in this, but I would think that, you know, with the 1% tax turned away by the town of Woodstock, we need to be looking at how can we help the community at large? How can we get the biggest bang for the buck for the people who live here and the people who visit? So that's all I'm trying to say, is that I think that that's something based on the climate and the financial, what's going on here. It's something that we need to think about. And I would recommend in the future that the EDC thinks about broadening the larger picture with some of the grant money. I don't know if I'm making sense or not.
Yeah, I think you are. Let me just respond on Todd, then Todd, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and then I'll respond.
Yeah, Lisa, first of all, thanks for attending the meeting. We want everybody to attend, so it's nice seeing folks here. It's important to know a couple things on what you're saying, is that we haven't told anybody what they can or can't apply for, because that's not what the grant process is. The grant process is an open forum, public. And so maybe some of the things you think that would be a waste of money, we may also agree. And you'll certainly see when folks come and pitch their idea and go through it, then how we vote. And hopefully some of the votes we do align with the way you might vote if you were a member of the EDC. I also encourage anybody like Bill to submit grant applications. And we have 4th of July fireworks. There's the Christmas lights in the village. So there are lots of things that people are requesting. So the more engagement, the better. And that's what we're here for. So I think that your worry can be put aside, because we're already thinking like that. We want everything to have a large impact for the town. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but I want you to know that that's really what we're doing already. So some things you may see doesn't mean that we think they're good ideas, but it's an open forum to submit the applications, and they'll be reviewed at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
I'd also add, I do think that this is the, you know, Lisa, your comments on this, while each person, you're the 3rd person or the 4th person in the last 48 hours who have made similar comments, at least to me personally. People call me up and so forth, and I'm sure others on the EDC are, you know, hearing from different members of the community and so forth. And I think maybe there was some misunderstanding that simply by virtue of someone applying, that it meant that the application had the endorsement of the EDC. I guess I'm saying what Todd said in a different way. I would encourage you to look carefully. This document that I presented a minute ago is on the website. I'd encourage you to look carefully through the list of applications that were submitted, and also the list of applications that were not submitted, that didn't make, you know, that decided not to go through to the final process, and try to identify those which you think would, you know, would benefit solely a single individual business, and whether or not those were actually submitted by the EDC or not. I think you'll find that there are none, I don't think there are any, I could be wrong, that were submitted by the EDC that are of the nature that you described. And I think most of the ones, to be honest, that were submitted on behalf of individual businesses for whatever reason were ultimately not submitted in the final application. So I do know that there were 50 applications. As Todd said, it was a very open process. I know that when people, including some members of the EDC, went through that list of 50, our reactions to different applications were quite different, as it sounds like yours were as well. So I just encourage you to stay, you know, to stay on top of the actual applications that have been submitted, which is already down by a third. And then secondly, as Todd said, to see what decisions that we make. And by the way, if you, it's very valuable for people in the community to disagree with the decisions. And we're about to start a discussion, which I want to move to in a moment, to solicit feedback from the community before we make the decision so that we can take your feedback into account. So Lisa, I strongly encourage you over the next week, we're going to launch this tomorrow morning. You have 1 week between tomorrow and next Friday to post on our discussion forum exactly the comment you made. So it's not just the 25 people that are in this meeting, but the entire community can see what you have to say, and others can comment and agree or disagree and so forth. So that feedback is that you're giving us tonight, and I encourage you to repeat it on the online forum. So
I will. Thank you.
all right, terrific. Joe, and then Kareem, and then hopefully we can move on. Joe?
Well, I think probably at this point, it might be well to remind the public that we have done that in the past and we will continue to. I mean, Teagle's Landings comes to mind, where we spent EDC money for the public at large, visitors and local. And there's a grant request that I made that it's going to beautify downtown with trees and more benches. So, I mean, we do that, and I think it should be noted.
Yeah. Kareem?
Yeah, very quickly, since this is in the same vein of what I said before, what Lisa brought up, and what I had been advocating is to take a percentage of the funds that the EDC gets. So that number is going to vary, right? And let's call it 50%. And that 50% is going to be dedicated to definitely community type projects, as opposed to, private endeavors that may or may not impact the community from an economic development point of view. And that's where the discussion with the select board needs to come in, unless that's something within the purview of the EDC to set such a policy and to determine that 50% is going to be driven by them at a minimum, and the other 50% will go to grants, of which some of them may have a community impact clearly, others may be more of a private nature. Thank you.
All right. I think, Kareem, I appreciate the comment, and I guess maybe one of the few prerogatives I have as the chair is to have the last word. So I'm going to have the last word on this, and then let's go on to our last topic, which is we have to make a decision on tonight. But I just want to point out, so we have made 70 grants since 2016. Those 70 grants are listed on the EDC's website, and you can look through them. It depends, 9 of them, I think 9 of them out of 70, or maybe 7 out of 7, or 6 out of 70. It's either 6 or 9 out of 70 were made to private entities. 6 out of 70 or 9 out of 70. The total number given to private entities was about $120,000. The biggest piece of that, almost half of it, $55,000, was the EDC Business Relief Fund, which was given to merchants in Woodstock in the end of March 2020, when, if you recall, the merchants didn't know whether or not they would survive. And we did a survey of the community at the time, asking whether or not it was appropriate for us to give money to private entities. And we gave people 3 choices. Absolutely, the money is collected by the merchants, they ought to get it back. That was a very small group. The other extreme, no, we should never give any money under any circumstances to private businesses. That was a very small group. And the middle group, which I think was about 80%, said, we don't like the idea of giving a lot of money to for-profit businesses, but this is an emergency. We support doing it in this case. That's half of the 60,000 of the 120,000. 30,000 was given to a single business in, those of you who've been on longer than I have, the Optimist Center. To describe the Optimist, with due respect, to describe the Optimist Center as a for-profit business would be a misnomer. But it,
yes.
And let's leave that discussion aside. For those of you that are interested offline, we can tell you why. But it was intended as a benefit to the broader community in some sense. And the other 20,000 is, was to a private entity that wanted to do a jazz concert on the green or and outside of their business or things of that sort that was benefiting the community. So I guess I object to the subtle implication that a significant portion of EDC funds have in fact factually in the past been given to a group of people who are doing things that benefit only themselves and have no or limited benefit to the community. And so I would ask, by the way, if that is the case, I don't believe it is the case factually. And so I think that this discussion, the way it should proceed is not on a philosophical level, but to go back and say, these are the 70. Here are the ones that we think are giving money to private individuals without any benefit to the community, and that we would like the EDC to stop granting those. And I think, by the way, that the EDC should absolutely take that list and act on it and consider it very, very seriously. And so I would encourage anybody who, feels that we are in fact doing that to submit that list. And I think in a public meeting, we should go through it, and we should. Now, by the way, I will say that there's not a single thing that the EDC has ever granted money to that everyone in Woodstock agrees was good for the community. Not one of the 70. So I'm not saying that we're perfect, and I'm certainly not saying that we're all going to agree. But in any event, I think that the citizens have a right to ask this question, but we need to use the facts. And so let's get the list. What out of the 70, let's come up with a list of the things that, as we said, that are meeting these criteria, and let's have a debate about that. And so I don't. So,
John, I think an important thing too is people voted on this tax for economic development. I think we need to remember that. It won its vote for what it was being voted on for. So we need to make sure too that we understand that it is the EDC, economic development, so we need to make sure that that's a strong part of the focus.
Yeah.
But your interpretation, Patrick, or yours, John, might be different from mine. I'm sorry to say.
Absolutely. My point, though, exactly. So my point is that I think that is the case, and that is fine. Kareem, you and I have disagreed about a few things, not that many, but again, we all disagree about things. But I think to characterize, but I think what we are doing is disagreeing about what is economic and community development. But we agree that everything the EDC should be doing should be for economic and community development. And what I want to do is to take that implication out of the discussion.
Well said, John.
Well said.
Let's try to point of order, move on here.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the last item, but Lisa, thank you, and Kareem both. Thank you for making those points. And I think this is a debate or discussion that will continue. Okay, the last item on the agenda is not whether or how to seek public input. We have agreed that because of the time pressures that we understand from our scheduling discussion earlier, we need to seek public input primarily online, maybe exclusively online. And so we've agreed tomorrow morning, and we're ready to go technically. We have a discussion forum that's ready to go on the EDC website that people can post their comments. They'll have a week that will give us we can all follow it during the week, and that'll give, and then it'll finish on Friday, and then our annual meeting is on Saturday. We discussed last meeting, just to remind everybody, to what extent that forum should be moderated. And the word moderated in hindsight, it could have a lot of different meanings. And I think we had a kind of a passionate debate about moderation and what the nature of online discourse is and so forth. I think this is a great topic for discussion. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it makes all that much difference for this annual meeting process. It's only 1 week. We're talking about specific applications. I don't think this is going to explode and get out of hand, but I do think, and Mary is sitting here and she and I talked about this briefly earlier today, I do think it's an opportunity for the community to begin to talk about how does the community of Woodstock want to have an online discourse in the future, not just for this next week, but over the next decade, because it's going to be an important part of our community. So I was happy to kind of trigger this discussion. Deborah Green has developed a proposal which I think is a middle ground. It accommodates, if I remember Todd's comments, of basically we should let people say what they want to say, but it also accommodates the desire on some people's parts, maybe even Todd's part, to kind of explain to people, look, we expect this to be civil, we want it to be on topic, we want it to be productive. So Deborah, I don't know, I have put basically the 2 sets of bullet points, the 5 things, you know, that, let me just put it on the screen, and maybe you just want to talk through those and make any other comments you want. And let's see if we have a quick consensus or if we need to have a kind of a longer debate about it. Would that be all right, Deborah, if you do that? All right, so let me. Okay, and I think if I do this. How are we doing here? So Deborah, I have this, the guidelines and the terms and conditions. And there's the full text of the guideline of this is available. There's an introductory paragraph that kind of sets the stage, and that will all be visible on the website as you make your comments. But Deborah, do you want to talk about this a bit, or am I putting you on the spot?
Sure. I mean, yeah, and I think that the lead in is basically just saying that we have the desire to respect people and like we want to make sure that people will in the future continue to do good work here and not feel like they're going to be subjecting themselves to a lot of stuff if they are trying to do something good. So yeah, just, I mean, everybody could read this through. What we're basically saying is just identify the project and the reason for support and for not being for support or opposing it. So that you're just being very specific. The go deep and be brief is a part of number 1. Be respectful. Remember that every application putting forward believes that they are helping the community. Again, please stick to the facts as much as possible. Go deep, be brief, keep to the point, address the project, not the person, and refrain from attacks. I mean, it's pretty basic.
Do you want to just go through the second set and then come
Yeah.
back and discuss
Yeah,
it?
sure. All contents posted on this forum will be publicly accessible online and will become part of public record. Registration will require you to post the content on this forum. A valid and verifiable email must be provided upon registration and your name. So this will not be a place that you can do things anonymously. All content posted to the forum will include the name of who is registered to that post. Agree not to post copyrights. You know, those are just some basic things. And obviously they are the views of the person, not of the EDC. The main point here is, yes, we all have our right to speak our minds. And this is not what it's about. It's about building a safe place for people to express their opinion and find a way to differ and to hear each other. This isn't really, we also want to make sure that it's not a place that's necessarily about back and forth and being combative. It's letting us know for or against and the reasons why.
All right, good. All right, any comments or any comments about?
Could you go back to the first screen?
Did I just
Okay.
do that? Yeah.
You did, sorry.
Does this feel uncomfortable to anyone?
I think it feels great. When on the first page, I was concerned about anonymity, but you addressed that on the second page. I do think people tend to be a little more reasonable when they are not behind the wall of anonymity.
Yeah.
Can you just remind me who is anybody sort of policing is the wrong word, but reviewing this, and who is that, and when are we all doing it? Are we supposed to or expected in any way to respond?
We're not expected to respond. This is sort of the citizen comments. This is citizen comments, not sort of. I think we should say this is citizen comments. We're not expected to respond. And in fact, I think it would be good, unless you all disagree. Oh, Todd, I see your hand raised. I'll come to you in a second. I think it would be good if, unless we disagree, that we actually should not post on it. It feels like we should. It's time. Our time to speak is during the the annual meetings, the meetings.
I agree.
So this is sort of citizen comments.
Yeah.
You're not required to, EDC members are not required to monitor it. There's a couple people who have volunteered to just kind of monitor it and let EDC members know if they see something that they think ought to be looked at. And we don't have any rules, or, the EDC will act, any actions that we took. I don't anticipate taking any actions, but if we did take actions, the way we take actions are to call a meeting and to have a public meeting and discuss it and then decide to take action, which is always our right to do it, for anything. So let me just, I just want to, well, Todd, then Tom, then Deborah. So Mika, does that answer? We answered your question.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, Todd, then Tom, then Deborah.
This is that last meeting was emotional. That was mostly my fault, but this document that you all, Deborah, put together and we read earlier and is on the screen now is the best version of a committee coming together and making something very simple and reasonable and understanding. So this just checks every box for me. And I just want to say, I think it's great work, and it's clear, it's concise, it lets people stand on their own merits. And I'm really happy that you brought this in this way to us. It's, again, very clear, concise. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. I fully support it as written.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Todd. Tom, and then Deborah.
Hey, John, what happens if there's something is posted that you think is obnoxious or not appropriate? Is there any rule for censorship, or is there to be no censorship?
I think neither.
Okay. There's censorship and no censorship.
No,
Neither one?
I'll speak to that. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Deborah.
I mean, I'm curious what neither means. So if you finish what you were going to say, and then I'll say.
There is no rule that we are not stating any rule that says we are not predicting what actions we would take, since we are not presented with a situation on which to take action. We've set the expectations. We are allowed legally to limit discussion in a public forum to the topics that we have asked the discussion to focus on. I don't want to, we are allowed to shut the forum. We are allowed to shut the forum down. We're allowed to delete a post. We're allowed to do all of that. We have to do that in a public. We would have to. I would consider us to have to do that as a result of a discussion in a public meeting, which we could choose to do if we.
Let me say it differently, John, because I wasn't talking so much about philosophically whether it's good or not. I think people should be alerted to the fact that you reserve the right to delete any people who violate the rules. People is not the right word. Any post that violates the rules.
Yeah,
and you should alert people. I would suggest respectfully that you alert people ahead of time that may happen.
Yeah,
so people don't feel you're censoring it without being forewarned.
Okay, no, that was sort of, I think that was the gist of the debate that we had last month, although I may be misinterpreting it, but let me let other people comment. Deborah?
Kareem has his hand up first, and then I'll.
Oh, okay. All right, Kareem, and then Deborah.
Yeah, thank.
Oh, Kareem, you just muted yourself.
No, I think he's frozen.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Got
it. So my question is, how does this funnel through to the deliberations and discussions that the EDC is going to have? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, some people, maybe most people, will be saying which projects they support or do not support, or maybe rank them by order of preference, and hopefully give their reasons why. So is somebody on the EDC going to compile that so that at least there is an overall list of that the EDC can see where the public stands, so that they can take the public's opinion, as one feeder into your decisions and your discussions? Because otherwise it's just a public forum where people are going to go back and forth, and there is no sort of summary of the results. And what I'm trying to say, right? So how does that feed into the discussions of the EDC?
I think in two ways. One is this first way will not give you much satisfaction, which is that each member of the EDC on their own has, I think, an implicit obligation to look at the comments. But I personally will try to, and I would welcome any help. But I personally will try to at least codify and create a list on Friday night in advance of the annual meeting, and have that list available, distributed. Because I think that it's sort of like that list of, here's the list of the 29 grants and they add up to 500,000. That sort of thing is what you're suggesting. I agree that would be valuable. I hope we have time to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I've lost track of who was in the sequence. I think Deborah, you were next, and then it looks like Marion.
I want to get everybody's thoughts before I kind of.
Summarize.
So go ahead.
Marion.
So my only thought, and I don't want to go too deep down, like what could happen, but there are people that are, that may make threats. There are stalkers. These are things that happen in real life. And I think my concerns are twofold. One is the idea that we have to call a public meeting in order to take an action. And I think if there's something that is personally threatening or disgusting attack, that we should feel comfortable that we will remove that without sort of going through a lengthy process. But at the same time, I would say we have, I think it was five sort of guiding principles.
Yeah. Do you want me to put those back?
We're obviously not going to remove a post because it doesn't meet the be brief, go deep guidelines, right? But we would remove a post because it was a personal attack or threatening in some way. And so would it make sense if we follow, I believe it was Thomas's point, that we should maybe give people fair warning that certain things might be removed, that you can say whatever you want, but if you are, I say this because I hosted Zoom meetings in the beginning of the pandemic, and we had Zoom bombers, and we would have random people appear who would bypass our login security, go to great lengths, and say the most shocking and disgusting. And I don't just mean like inappropriate. I mean like threaten to do horrible things to specific people in the room. And so these things happen. I just think it would be smart to sort of differentiate between, you may say whatever you like, the be brief, the stay on point, those are all sort of suggestions, but there are certain things that we will remove, and that's different.
Thank you, Marion. That was a huge part of the conversation of trying to find the middle ground from last week. And the precursor, which is not up here, but will be online, is just without being parental, is just a reminder of, we will be community after these grants are given, and please speak in terms of being neighborly, perhaps in a way that online forums don't always promote. When you're in a room, you can shut a person up. When you're online, whether you put your name on it or not, oftentimes it can get out of hand. But we want to stick with the idea that, it's not going to be a problem. With that said, that last line, I do agree that it's, and if we feel like we need to have something that says it, but I mean, we're putting forward something that's saying, this is a community board for us to remain a community, and these things are how we're doing it. This part is not acceptable. I agree with you. If something shocking is on the board, if it goes into the last line, where if it's an insult directly at somebody, if it's an attack, if it's name, I forget what all the words are that I used, that we reserve the right to take that one off, because that is not helpful to our community. If there is an insult, if there is something racial, if there is something, sexist, whatever, we can take that off. And I don't feel like we need to put a meeting together to say, this horrible word that's on it, do we agree as a group, to take it off? I mean, I think unless there's somebody on the group that's okay with having, that kind of stuff, then let's have a conversation. But I don't think this is a group of people who are like, yeah, I think it's really healthy for us to have that on the board.
Well, all right, let me, I think we've narrowed down on the issue that, that is tricky and that we need to make a decision on, and I think we can. First of all, just to be clear, just sort of when we use the word we have the right, we do not need to decide whether or not we have the right to delete posts. We do, period, full stop. So we have that right. We don't have to be right. I think there are two questions. One is, should we tell people that we have that right or not? I would suggest that we not, but I would be okay with telling them, since it is true we have them. The reason I would suggest we not tell them is because I don't want to have a big discussion about whether we have the right. It's not open to discussion. We have that right.
But John, that's not a question then. I think you should put it on there just so people know if their post disappears, there's a reason for it. And if we have the right, then say it. What's the, I think that for protection of people and things, I think we should just say we have the right, and hopefully we never have to use it.
I hope I'm okay with that. I hope that then the discussion forum doesn't become a debate about whether or not we have the right, in which case we lose the opportunity to actually get feedback on the applications. But that's the choice. Anyway, I understand that you could argue reasonably on both sides. We'll come back to that. I'm just trying to point out the decisions we need to make. The first decision is, do we want it? We don't have to debate whether we have it. The question is, should we simply have a sentence that says we will remove whatever? The second question is, since I think all of us, the second question is, since we have the right, and since I think we would all agree with what Marion and Deborah was saying, that we may need to use it, we hope we don't, we need to have a process for exercising that right. And that process, I think, has to be defensible. And the process that I was implicitly, and let me explicitly propose, is the process which we have, which is, for example, we can have a meeting, an emergency meeting, if it's time sensitive. The law allows us to do that. Something like this, a threatening post, which we would be notified by instantly. I mean, the forum is set up so that if you subscribe to it, every single post you'll get in the email. So we'll know within minutes that there's a post there. Five of us can get on, can schedule a meeting immediately. We do need to have 5 people. And if the 5 people basically, and if we decide that the post violates the guidelines that we said, we can remove it at that moment.
John, is that what
I'm fine with a different process, but the two decisions we need to make are, what process do we use to exercise the right that we have? Those are the two.
But do we have to vote to take something down? I thought we had the right.
Who?
That's Patrick.
The EDC has a right to do it.
So why do we need to vote on it? If we have the right to do it,
who will take it down? Do you want me to take it down? Do you want to?
I think you should have, John, I would respectfully suggest, I think you should have one person who's generally in charge and 2 people confirming. So you have 3 people agree. That makes sense.
We've debated this. This. Why are we having the same? We've already come up with a compromise. Why are we going backwards right now, guys?
No, we're not. No, Todd, we're not.
I don't think it's going backwards.
Tonight's discussion is to decide this. We've framed it, and we've proposed something, but we are.
Let people have an opportunity to not disappoint this community. If someone posts something and it's egregious, they're horrible. 1, 2, we're going to know it. And then I say at that moment, we blast it out there that this is not acceptable and this is not going to stand in our community.
There you go.
But doing it ahead of time, I'm with you, Patrick, and I'm with you, John, on the both. I could see them both, but doing it ahead of time, is a little disrespectful to people who find that really offensive and want to get into the weeds on whether anyone's post and anything should ever be deleted anywhere, no matter what their rights are. That's a whole thing. So I would suggest that perhaps we have the wording ready to go. We have an emergency procedure should something horrible happen ready to go, but that we hope that nothing's going to happen and people will have civil discourse and the community can stand on its 2 feet and be representative. If a
Agreed.
hacker comes in and posts something horrible, we execute.
Right, and
the-
what
the
we're talking,
option.
right, and so the execution question is what process, what's the emergency process? I proposed 5 people, Tom proposed 3, Patrick proposed maybe 1, whatever, Deborah, and then Mika.
Okay, so here's the thing. So how about we come up with a compromise on the compromise? Let's have a meeting, an emergency meeting right now and agree that if it's sexist, racist, a personal attack, and let me ask me, add if you think there's something else that comes across, we have something ready to go, and John has the right to immediately take it down so it doesn't do damage in the community and sends out something. So for those things, we are right now saying we're not going to stand for it. And it's not, it's not subjective, it's very specific. Can we vote on that and agree that those are immediately taken down without having to call an emergency meeting?
We can, if you want to delegate to me, that's the decision I'm proposing to make.
But that we're clear about what those things are. It's not ambiguous because it could ruffle somebody's feathers. It's not about those comments. It's about, the getting the dive bomb, the hurting somebody in the community, the sexist, racist, etc.
The words you use, attacks, the insults, foul language. I mean, you have it spelled out in here. That's why I'm so confused. You did it here.
Right. My only comment was that that's not differentiated from the other 5 items. And so those are the conditions under which we would delete, whereas the other 5 items are, the other 4 items
more
are not
subjective.
conditions. Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, whoops, I got the wrong thing here. Let me put up that page again.
I think they're making something very complicated personally.
Yeah, no, well, I think I'm amused by people's belief that we could make this very clear cut and not subjective, but leave that aside.
But that's why I'm saying, let's at least come up with the things that, that we can just kind of know that we have in our back pocket in case we need to do something. I mean, I'm gonna express something that happened during a High Holy Day service with Shir Shalom. And here we are in our private homes praying, and there was somebody that came on out of nowhere and all of a sudden is, on the chat and saying these things about Hitler and Jews and etc. while we're in the middle of prayer. Yes, we were all there and present, but there wasn't a conversation about what should be done. He was taken off, and so that's all I'm saying is that there's some basic guidelines that we can agree on, which I think don't need to call an emergency meeting. And that's the base I'm looking for.
Joe,
And I agree with that totally.
Yeah, Joe and then Kareem.
I want to say this, hopefully that it might turn down the temperature a little bit and hopefully kind of ease the conversation. I was on a planning commission for 10 years, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And at that time, the planning commission was responsible for all permits, all zoning. You couldn't put up a TV dish without going to the planning commission. You couldn't put on an addition to your house, screen anything, do anything without going through the planning commission. There was some very heated discussions and disagreements during some of those meetings. I myself was called to be overstepping my bounds and then I've been on the EDC since the beginning. And there's been discussions then too. But what I'm hearing as being described has never happened. We live in Vermont. I know maybe I'm soft pedaling this a little bit too much, but it's just never happened. Now, will it never happen? I can't say that. Of course not. It might, but I think everybody's getting heated up over something that's never happened and could possibly not happen. We've made a decision. It can be taken off. John has the authority to do that. End the story. Let's move on.
Kareem? Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you guys. Obviously, you're deciding on your process, and I think this is a good thing. On a side note, I agree. If something egregious, you probably don't need a meeting. The only issue, John, if you're out of town or whatever, you probably need to designate somebody else that has access to the back end and can get rid of that. So just to close all the loops, right? I think there where you might have the biggest challenge. And by the way, Joe, there was a posting in the Crier a few days ago that was very close to being, disgusting. Okay, but anyway, there where we might have an issue is somebody who starts rambling on about nothing that has to do with the EDC. They just want to use that forum to complain, I don't know, about sewer rates or whatever it is. Maybe at that point, you need to reach out personally to that person and tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to take this thing down because it has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish. That was my point.
Okay, I think what I would like to do is on the issue of what is the emergency procedure, I think we should do this by making a motion. And I think it's important actually that we do that in a public meeting. And I'm not trying to gain this for myself, but I'm just repeating what you've all said, that what we do is that the EDC will delegate to me as the chair the responsibility for deleting posts that we believe that would be very harmful to the community and would violate the standards and the guidelines that Deborah said. And some of those guidelines, and I think, Marion, this was your point, some of those guidelines, if violated, for example, lack of crispness, would not be dangerous to the community. It would be unfortunate. And some of those things, like people talking about Hitler during a discussion and people praying, would be harmful to the community. And so you're going to delegate to me, and I have to use the subjective decisions as to whether or not something reaches that threshold.
Second it.
And that. Okay, and then, right, well, actually, let me just hold off on the motion because the motion will also, well, we don't need a motion for whether to say that, whether to comment on it. So I'll make that motion that the board, that the EDC delegate that to me, and that during this week, I will act on behalf of the board to do that. And then, all right, any further discussion about that before we come to what we communicate? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Maybe I think I'm allowed to vote. Okay, any opposed? Okay, and the last question we have to decide is whether or not we say that. And so we would basically have a sentence that, I don't want to try to write the sentence now. You can delegate to me writing the sentence too. But the sentence would basically say that, severe violations of these guidelines may result in the removal of a post, something like that.
I think you keep it simpler. Just, we can remove a post at our discretion.
I agree. I don't think this needs to be a thing. I think, it's going to be very obvious.
Yeah.
When something needs to be removed, it'll be obvious. And the person who
Exactly.
posted it isn't going to be surprised. Like we just,
I
we
agree
get,
with that.
yeah.
I agree
No,
with that.
but what we're discussing is whether we're going to say that, whether we're going to say something about removal. That's
I don't think there are very few circumstances where that is not listed as part of the terms and conditions of some kind of public discourse. Like I think that this is kind of standard procedure. You can't talk like that. The end, you're out.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
fine.
All right, so is there a consent, Todd, and then we'll see if there's a consensus that we should be saying something.
I disagree, but I get it. I disagree because I want to give people the benefit of the doubt in this community to behave properly. And then the fact is that we lose nothing worrying about if someone wonders where their post went. Well, like you said, they're going to know, and we can email them and tell them you're not a good person. You did this, and this isn't allowed. And then I say my compromise is that if something comes up, then we make it real clear to everybody from that first instance. and we can have an example of that. You know, I just
How
feel
come
like
anybody's going to be offended by having a,
I'm offended by it because I don't think our neighbors would be as disgusting as we're hearing. I don't think that hackers are going to try penetrating the listserv of Woodstock, per Joe's point. So I'm just saying my opinion. I will vote no. It's my opinion. I'm just saying my opinion. I agree with lots of things people in this commission say, and I disagree with some other things. I just don't agree with you on this one. I'm sorry.
Patrick?
No, Todd has the right to say that, and I totally agree. My only thought is we're just putting it there so that if somebody does complain, it was there. It's just a common thing, you know, just like there's a speed limit sign, you know, if you go over the speed limit, you know, you get a ticket. If you don't, you don't. That's all it is. It's just a speed bump.
Okay. I have a last comment. Tom, it looks like Tom is raising his hand, but I don't see where Tom is.
I'm right here. Can you see
Tom's
me?
there.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Tom, go ahead.
Picking up on what I think it was Deborah said, I think if you look at our guidelines, number 6 is what we're talking about. I think a simple parentheses at number 6, saying we reserve the right in our sole judgment to remove posts violating this point.
Yeah.
And I think you have it. Deborah,
I
you're
think
on
it's a
mute.
great way of doing it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I don't think we need a motion for this. This is just how we, you know, we have, so I will get that into the language. These things are editable if you all, and just going to add a quick sentence. So, you know, I'm just going to write it right now. Oh God, I don't want to edit by the group. If anyone objects to what I write, sole judgment, you know, we'll remove it. Okay, excellent. So I think I will announce on the listserv tonight that will appear tomorrow morning that there's a discussion forum available, and encourage people to comment. And it will be accessible. Well, you'll see it on the listserv. I'll send a copy to all of you, but you'll see it on the listserv. On the homepage of the EDC, it will point to the forum. There'll be a link to the forum, and you can get at it directly, and it's just a regular discussion forum. And we'll see what happens. So, and I will do my best to kind of create a summary. I will elicit all of you, many of you I know are itching to participate in that summary exercise on Friday to summarize those comments. So please send me your emails, and I will include you in that process if you would like to volunteer. Otherwise, I think that's our agenda. Are there any other issues for us to discuss?
Adjourn.
Yeah. Who's that, Joe?
Yes,
Just to adjourn. You did say adjourn, right, Joe?
I did.
Oh, all right. There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
night. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nikki. Take care. Nikki, can I end the meeting?
You can, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.